Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Political Education for Freedom podcast. I'm your host, Nitra, and today we are picking up where we left off with the HISD board controversy and the detailed information about Mike Miles and the current state of affairs within the district. Before we get started, be sure to visit our website at Political Education for Freedom for additional resources and insights. Follow us on all social media platforms at Educate to Free Us. Again, that's at Educate to Free Us, and you can see it up there underneath my name. So, the last time I talked about history of TEA, the HISD takeover. I went into detail about the timeline of events and how the things happened up until today, almost. Anyway, so I mentioned that there was some funny business going on with the board, which I didn't get into a lot of details. The most that I said before was that the board violated open law by having a secret meeting, basically, to vote out the interim superintendent, Dr. Latham. To understand what and how that happened, necessary that we go back to 1994 board controversy. And in 1994, I was in school at HISD. I am a product of HISD. And I remember this time frame. I remember when we had the first Black superintendent at HISD. I remember that. It was a lot of talk about it. It was, even though the school that I attended, I had at least one white teacher per grade level, but overall, all of my teachers were Black. The school principal was Black, and it was a Black woman. I remember that. So it was just, I'm essentially going to school, Black people, Black leadership, Black teachers, for it to be, and I'm only 9 at the time. I didn't even know what the hell a superintendent was. But the way it was celebrated that Dr. Page became the superintendent, it was like, oh, wow, I guess this is a big deal. But because I'm just surrounded at this time, my whole education is just surrounded by Black people, I'm thinking, like, so who was the other person before? I didn't think that Black school like mine, and of course, remember, I'm only about 9 or 10. I wasn't thinking a Black school like mine was being largely overran by somebody who wasn't Black. Like, to have a white teacher at the school that I was at was like, that's a white lady. And it was mostly white women. It was not white men. I didn't actually encounter a white male teacher until nope, not high school. Yeah, until middle school is when I had a white male teacher. But middle school is also when I had most of my white teachers, just overall in general. It was a mix, probably about 50-50, Black teacher, white teachers. But I had never had a white man as a teacher. If I had anybody white as a teacher, it was a white woman. I moved up with my friends, so we were all Black. And so it was still just, this is just regular. I'm with my Black friends. Yeah, we see white people here and there. And in middle school, I was in gifted. And so most of my classmates were Vietnamese, maybe 1 or 2 white people in there. And I'm thinking about, I'm not saying the whole, I'm just saying like my classroom, the setting with the kids within my classroom, 20, 30 kids. Half of them were Vietnamese. A third of them were Black, and a third of that half, it could have been a couple of Hispanics here and there. It wasn't large. It was almost just as many Vietnamese gifted students there were Black gifted students, with the exception maybe 1 or 2 white people, from what I can remember. So it wasn't just, I was still around basically my people, but teachers and all of that. It was different. But anyway, in 94, I was still in elementary school. And I remember when Rod Page took over as superintendent because it was a big deal. It was celebrated at school. I remember Rod Page came to our school, which was like odd to me anyway, because it was almost like, oh, like this guy is like a really big deal type guy. Like, why is he at our school? But and he would go there often. It would not be every day, but he was seen, put it like that. I saw him at, I don't know what kind of events we would have, like Black History Month events and stuff like that. I saw him often at those at my school. So it was a big deal when he became uh, superintendent. The way he became superintendent is similar to what was done to Dr. Latham in 19. So in 2019, 5 board members, Elizabeth Santos, Diana Devalia, Sergio Lira, Holly, Maria Flynn, Valeska, and Ann Sung, were involved in a private meeting that violated the Open Meetings Act. And this was one of the issues that was cited when TEA decided to intervene and take over the board. And it's so wild because it almost seems like a get back, right? Because so what happened with Rod Page in 94, the HISD board at the time was dominated by white trustees. And I want to get the full makeup of the board. Okay, so in 94, the school board was the same. It had the same 9 members. Before, the white trustees were the ones in power. They had 4 seats. There were 4 white trustees. Now, there were 2 Hispanic or Latino, Latinx, I don't know whichever term to use, trustees at the time. And then there were 3 Black trustees. One of those trustees was Dr. Page. The board had just elected one of the white trustees as the president of the board. And they were trying to implement their new philosophy of basically running the school district like a business. And they hired a superintendent at the time who they hired him in 90 or 91. And he was basically pushing that agenda of having the school district be ran like a business. So this guy, after being there 3 years, he announced he was, and the board at the time, which was in 94, wanted someone who would be committed to this type of reform. And I'm putting up air quotes around reform. And the outgoing superintendent, there was issues with them selecting him as a superintendent. He wrote a book about it. He talked about how the white trustees secretly negotiated with the 2 Hispanic trustees to hire him and completely shut out the 3 Black trustees in the process. This sort of behavior is, it's not new. It's not unheard of. Unless you somebody like me, at this time I was just a kid, so I didn't know all of this shit. This guy, I guess I'm assuming he's white. I'm gonna pull him up really quick too, cause I want to show all these people. Okay, this guy Frank Petrozzillo, dude has a Wikipedia, but there's no picture in there. I want to see some faces. Okay, let me pause this real quick because this guy doesn't want to be found. Took a little while to find him, but apparently his ass, he left Houston ISD and just went somewhere else. I guess he retired from Cherokee County School District. in 2015. So this is the guy who was in charge in 1991, and the way he was put in was by the four white trustees negotiating with the two Hispanic trustees and shut out the three black trustees. Now, if we fast forward to 94, they met in closed session, which is somewhat not, I guess this is not too much controversy there, but there is some secret done here. So in 90, the school board voted 5-3 to ask Dr. Page to resign his board seat and take the job of superintendent, which made him become the first black superintendent in the history of Houston ISD. They gave no notice to the public, and there was no discussion or hearings about it. At the time, the Chronicle wrote an article about it saying that the action was considered a surprise move. But by the time the decision was made public, the decision had already been made. Now, the Latinx or Hispanic community at the time was caught off guard, and two of the three votes against the move were cast by the Hispanic or Latinx board members in an opposition move from 91. Okay, let's do it like this. They conspired to put this guy in. Yeah, that guy right there. They conspired with the white people to put this guy in. And then in 1994, white people conspired with the black board members to hire Dr. Page. So you see this tit for tat right here. So you got at the helm of all of this is goddamn white people. Look at how easily they playing both sides. This is textbook. They fell for it with putting this guy in, and then they go back and conspire with the black board members to put a black guy in, which at the time the Hispanic members and the Hispanic community was, of course, upset. As if, see, this is weird. Okay, so this should even the playing field. It's okay, y'all did us, and then we did y'all back. Okay, now let's just, now that we didn't got that shit out the way, let's move on. Cause you hit me, I hit you back, type shit. But of course, that it doesn't work like that because people don't want to stop fighting. But so after uh they hired Dr. Pay, about 4 days after the vote, the Hispanic people in the community rallied about 200 people to show up at a meeting at a local restaurant meeting spot. And they had some discussions with five trustees. And of the five, I guess they were cackling. I want to say that. So the Hispanics seek organize. And this is from the local chronicle at the time. They described it as checks were written, committees was formed, and volunteer lists were made. And about 6 days after that, there was an editorial published in the Chronicle talking about, basically it was like a puff piece on Dr. Page. And he wrote an editorial about the behavior of the trustees. So now he does say that, of course, Dr. Page is qualified to be in this position, but them making this decision in a secretive manner was basically underhanded and just creates public distrust. Now, because it didn't have no discussions about it. So the Hispanic community saw it as unjust and discriminatory. They claimed that it was an act of exclusion. Let me pull up Dr. Page too, because I got this white man up here. Okay, now he has a Wikipedia, and there he go. There's Dr. Page. So he's the guy that was replaced that took over in 94 as the superintendent. And the Hispanic community was upset about it. Now, the black community was not upset. They pretty much rooting for him. This is the first black superintendent of schools. This is something that should be celebrated. Not, I guess it's more when that whole hysteria about, oh, there's a black leader or this black person that's a leader. That's where all the craze is. Not really worrying about how the shit really happened. So some of the trustees has said that they discussed the idea of meeting individually with the trustees. A quorum of board members never met to consider the matter. And this is a quote from one of the trustees saying, we talked about things amongst each other, one on one, maybe one on two, all the time, constantly. And that was Kathy Mintzberg at the time. Conversations are not violations of open meetings. So this is her excuse, or this is her trying to justify whatever happened. Second, because I want to look some more people up. Okay, and it took a little too long for me to look up these other trustees, but so it later came out that a group of four trustees, Page, McAdams, Franklin, and Mintzberg, the one who said conversations are not violations, it later came out that they met up at a hotel 10 days before the vote was taken about talking about putting Dr. Page. After that came out, the Hispanic community started researching the possibly filing of lawsuits over saying the violations were the Texas Open Meetings Act. And this is a state law that prohibits school board trustees from seeking employment from the district in which they're elected. And among other things, they claim Dr. Page's lack of appropriate superintendent credentials. But by this time, Black community had started to rally around Dr. Page. There was church leaders, community members, just pretty much all of these people that I've known growing up, especially in the church. They came around, they basically rallied around Dr. Page staying in that position. Now, so they did that in January of 94. In February of 94, the board formalized its offer of employment to Dr. Page, and he began working as superintendent. Now, check this out. A few days later, the Hispanic Education Committee filed a formal complaint with the Texas Education Agency saying that the board members had violated the Texas Open Meetings Act and other state laws, which, again, what happened? Triggered a special investigation by the agency. Now, they also filed a lawsuit, which eventually was heard in federal district court about 6 weeks later. And they issued a report detailing their findings, which their conclusion, they said that Dr. Page violated state law when he accepted the job of Houston ISD superintendent before resigning from the board, and that school board trustees may have violated the Texas Open Meetings Act by discussing Dr. Page's appointment in private meetings over the phone or whatever before they voted to hire him. And what happened from here, the commissioner recommended that the board immediately develop a open and appropriate search process to select a superintendent in July of 95 and assigned a TA official to oversee the implementation of the recommendations. The commissioner also turned over the findings of the report to the Harris County District Attorney for prosecution, saying that Page violated the law by accepting the job before resigning. So now the president of the board at the time, who Ron Franklin, was pretty pissed off at the findings of TEA's investigation. Now he goes on to say they claim they're supposedly about local control, yet they want to send an Austin bureaucrat to tell us how we should choose our superintendent. And he also said we have to respond to our constituency, which is, he's basically saying in so many words, he's in there. And now we got the black community saying he needs to stay there. So he's saying, and we got to respond to our constituency, which is complete bullshit. It's bullshit for his excuse. It's not bullshit that there was a uproar, black backlash about them trying to get him out now that he's in. Hell, we most of remember all of this was done in backdoor secrets. So these are all, the board is all elected officials. So no one is really thinking, because it eventually later came out that this is what happened. But once he's named, they voted on it, he's named, we're like, okay, what the hell? It's too late now. Now, just 3 years later, 3 years before this, y'all did this shit to put the other guy in. Even the people within the political workings, knowing that this shit is going on, they going back and saying, y'all just did this shit. Just because your man's is gone doesn't mean that you can just come in and say, no, we want our own person in there. They basically was saying, like, one church leader actually said, it's our time now. They brokered the deal to get the shit to happen. Now he's there. Ain't no sense of sending him back. We still need a superintendent. As even though they filed a lawsuit, they tried to do whatever to get him back, to get him out of there. It didn't happen. Some of those board members, some of the Hispanic constituents was thinking like, yeah, it's finna, we finna get him out of there and they finna have some criminal charges. But the Harris County District Attorney at the time, John Holmes, he announced he wouldn't take any actions against the trustee. And he was not convinced of wrongdoing. And this is a quote from him: since TEA investigators admitted that the trustees met privately without a quorum. So within a week, TEA had backed out of involvement in the whole investigation into HI, which they attribute that to the governor and Richards at the time. They claimed that the governor backed down. It's possible. I think Ann Richards saw what could come of it, even though clearly there was wrongdoing. But if we want to point fingers, then we just point fingers 3 years before that. Come on, we got to be consistent, right? So after everybody was just like, you know what, let's just leave this alone, let Dr. Page stay in there, the Hispanic Education Committee had filed their lawsuit. But in December, the judge who was over that case dismissed the case without a trial. And that was Hispanic Education Committee versus Houston ISD School District, and that was 1995. That case was from 1995. Dr. Page stayed the superintendent, and he stayed there as long as I can remember. I remember when he eventually stepped down or retired, but yeah, he stayed in there. And it's also important to note that the governor at the time was Ann Richards, and she was governor from 91 to 95. She was a Democrat. I believe that was the very last time there has been a Democratic governor of Texas. Can we guess what happened there? Can we guess what went on? Can we guess what shifted? I'm going to just guess and assume, okay, the Hispanic people didn't like what was going on. They filed their lawsuits and shit. They was pissed off. They feel like Ann Richards basically shut them down with a whole lawsuit or whatever over Rod Page. And I'm just assuming ever since then, they just been voting Republican or they double down on Republican. This was after the 60s. This was in the 90s. We know that the parties switched in the 60s. We the Dixiecrats, so they were Democrats, right? They are the ones that controlled the South. But in the 60s, during Johnson's administration, they all left and went to the Republican Party. The party makeups were already those southern states, Republican controlled, and northern states were democratically controlled. That was around the 60s, late 60s, early 70s. This is now the 90s. And we can go through the governors just to see, maybe I could be wrong. Maybe that wasn't the case. And okay, so I'm gonna share this. Oh, yeah, I'm gonna share it so everybody can see it. Cause maybe I could be wrong. Okay, wait, stop sharing. And I'm doing all of this before I get to the this guy, Mike Miles. Okay, so we gotta go past the 60s because that's when everything switched. Okay, so we got a Republican in 1978. In 82, we had a Democrat. 86 had a Republican. 90, we had a Democrat. That was Ann Richards. Yeah, I guess maybe it is safe to say that's what happened. Could be. Ever since 9, we've had nothing but Republican governors. It's possible the Hispanics felt like Ann Richards over them. And ever since then, in Texas, they've just gone with Republicans. I could be wrong, but I could also be right. It was after the 60s. So after the late 60s, it was still a little Democrat. It switched in 78, it was Republican. 82, it went to Democrat. 86, it was Republican. And then 90, it went to Democrat. Now, I'm not at all convinced that in the 70s that these Democrats were Dixiecrats who just hadn't switched parties. So that's also possible. So it may say Democratic, but they could have been complete Dixiecrats. Again, this is Texas. Hell, Ann Richards' ass might have been a Dixiecrat herself. I don't know. But from the looks of it, it looks Hispanic people doubled down with the Republican Party. Because if we look at the numbers and the population of brown people grew in Texas, even though the population of black people is large and the population of white people is also large, the population of the brown people, I want to say the makeup is much larger than, and then it gets weird there too because you can be white brown if that's what you want to call it. But that's it looks like that's what happened. The population of the largest counties in Texas they're still the largest today. So you have Harris County, Travis County, Bexar County, all of these different they're still pretty much the same with the population. The more outside areas, you can look at a Texas map and it'll show you like where the real deep red areas are. But yeah, statewide, the last time Ann Richards actually lost her reelection. That was in 95. And she lost to George W. Bush. And remember, case was dismissed in 95. So I'm just looking at it. Y'all can tell me if I'm wrong, if I'm looking too deep into it, or if I'm just miscalculating the shit. That's possible too. But if we fast forward to today with the board and what's going on, there were 5 board members, all Hispanic, and I am going to pull up their photos. They voted to oust Dr. Latham. Okay, it was actually 5 of them. You got the president, Diana DeVilla. I wonder if y'all can see this. Okay, there you go. So the board president, Diana, is in the center, joined by trustee Elizabeth Santos. She was one. Holly Maria Flynn. That was another. Sergio Lira. And there's one more that's missing. Annie or Ann Sung. Let's see if we can find her. Okay. Oh, now, okay. Now we getting close ups of them. All right. So that's Holly. Holly Maria Flynn ass. That's Elizabeth Santos. There you go. It's Ann Sung or Annie Sung. She look like she a Ann. We gonna call her Ann Sung. There go Ann Sung. And oh wait, did I miss Sergio ass? There goes Sergio. Now, with the HISD board takeover, folks, if you want to blame somebody, don't blame those teachers from Wheatley High School or Cashmere High School and all the other schools, because it ended up being 4 schools. Blame them 5 people right there, because they did some fuckery. They pulled the same shit they pulled in 94. Now, in 94 with Dr. Page, they got off smooth. Like nothing happened from that. TEA wasn't threatening a takeover. They wasn't trying to take over the district at the time. Hell, they were trying to charge people, I guess, individually with breaking laws and shit. In 2009, these board members must have forgot to take their damn double shot of espresso or some shit and forgot that in 2015 they passed the fucking law to be able to take over the district, and then backdoored in 20 and passed another law to be able to make sure they can take over the district or have the district sent over, or have the district controlled by a damn charter school or charter network. Did they forget? They just so caught up in they shit to where they didn't put all these fucking kids, all of these students under the thumb of Morath, which is the commissioner of TEA. And now they didn't put these babies in the hands of this dumb fuck, Mike Miles. This is their fault. Everything they was doing had nothing to do with the fucking kids. Nothing. It had nothing to do with the poor ratings. Nothing. It only had to do with the fact that they did not want a black woman as superintendent of HISD. They wanted a Hispanic, which they had 2 Hispanics before Dr. Latham, and both of them left. You doing all of this shit to try and get some people in that don't even want to be there. They tried to put in the guy, not the guy before the last guy. So the guy before Dr. Latham, not him, but the one before him, they were trying to get him to come back. I think his name was Saavedra. They trying to get him to come back. He don't want to come back. Obviously, he don't want to deal with you dumb fucks. You can't even remember that the state is doing everything that it can possibly do to take over the district. Now all y'all dumbasses don't have a job. None of y'all was on the side of the governor, meaning you ain't cool with him. So he wasn't finna keep your ass on the board. You screwed yourself. You already had, it was 5 of y'all. Y'all had some of the power. Y'all so fucking stupid. I'm mad because it's y'all fault. Like, you are the reason that this population, more than 50% of the population, is Hispanic. Guess who's getting hurt by you fucking dumbasses? 60% of the school population, meaning the kids. You fucking idiots. And it's not just 60%, because there's black kids in there that's being left behind too, or that's being screwed over too. Not to mention, you just screwed over fucking 1,200 people. 1,200 people. Because in 2019, everybody should be sending these people emails and messages calling them all dumb fucks. Just call them all fucking stupid. You idiots. It's all your fault. Because under the leadership of Dr. Latham, at least she was putting the schools on track. to getting out of the failing grades that they were getting. She was on track to do it. They ended up in 2022. Damn, Wheatley was a C. They were graded a C. But you fucking idiots had already in 2019 put the shit in motion for them to do this. This is what happens when people get in power and they get too powerful to the point where they don't give a fuck about nobody. These are the ones who was doing that shit when they could have simply just gave the position to Dr. Latham, let it run its course. All of the shit that was going on. We had COVID, Hurricane Harvey, all of that shit, the fucking freeze, like all of the shit that was going on in this state. And you have 5 fucking bozo clowns to go and do some stupid shit like this. Some fucking racist shit. This looks like the shit that happened in California. Hispanic board members talking about other, I don't know if they were board members or they could have been commissioners or something. I don't know. But they were elected officials. They wasn't on the school board. I think they were on the legislative, or maybe they were the council members. This looked like the same shit they did. They going in talking about fucking black kids, talking about elected officials, black children, then talking about the black people on the commission or on the council, just talking about them to the fucking, you fucking idiots. The crazy thing, the thing that I'm most pissed off about, and yeah, this episode ain't for kids. This is all grown-ups. These grown people gonna learn this shit today. So the fucked up thing about this and what they did and putting our kids in this situation is because in the 1970s, even in the 60s, but I want to say in the 70s as specific, because I actually did a podcast episode about this. When the NAACP was fighting all of these cases with discrimination, with the white people discriminating against black people, guess who else they was discriminating against? Fucking brown people. They wasn't just discriminating against black people, they were discriminating against brown people. And guess what happened? During those times, during segregation and integration, and they were fighting at HISD. This is HISD residents came together. They formed coalitions together and marched, protest Houston ISD fighting against integration. They came together and fought it together because they knew, obviously, those people at that time, they knew you're more powerful when you're together instead of being divided. Because now that you fucking idiots divided us, now look at us. Look at our kids. Now we're under the thumb of these fucking white supremacists who wants to do nothing more but oppress and suppress you and your fucking kids. They want to indoctrinate your kids into not even knowing anything about their history or culture. For all they care, you got to fall in line with whiteness. Problem with black people is our skin color won't allow us to fall in line with whiteness. And you 5 fucks over here obviously fell in line with the whiteness because you thought you was white. You thought you could do what those board members did back in 94 or in 91 and then back though in 94. Because we know if it was just the black board members who did that shit to get Rod Page in there, all them motherfuckers would have been out of there. But that was a key thing in that. It was four white board members. They wasn't finna fuck with them. So they had a little protection. The same way y'all had the protection in 91 when you conspired with the 4 white. Do we see the consistency here? These fucking white people is doing this shit. It's them that's breaking all of the fucking laws and rules, but nothing happens with them. And then Hispanics want to go after fucking Rod Page. Hell, what the fuck? He was outnumbered. It was only 3 of them. It was 4. They the one who had the power. All they had to do was sway 2 of them, or no, 1 of them, the same way like they swayed y'all to get the other guy in. And look at these different pieces, and this is me talking to my people right now. And yes, I don't give a fuck. That's just what I'm doing. If you look at the coverage from this board takeover and you see the different people that's writing these articles about how this shit came about, right? There, it's almost five that just off the top of the head articles that I've combed through over weeks that failed to mention these five fucks. But in previous writings, I saw how they were blaming Dr. Latham. They pissed off at Dr. Latham because Dr. Latham said in to avoid, because remember they had two options: either you lose the board or you give power over the 10 failing schools, which then was lowered to 4. You give the power over to the charter schools. Everybody was against that, understood. But Dr. Latham gave the other option aside from the board being taken over completely, meaning you don't have power to vote your board in. It's a sacrifice that we should be willing to make in order to keep the full control of the district. I'm not sure, but obviously there was something she felt would have been a better option in looking at all the options and what ended up happening in the end. Now, these schools are primarily black. The bulk of them are black schools, primarily black areas. No, I don't want our schools turned over to these fucking loan sharks either. But I'm assuming when you ain't got but two options, either we lose the whole district to TA or we lose 4 or 5 schools to the in district charter school that we already are working with, which they have some autonomy. Or do you all fight her to end up getting fucking fired anyway? Now, y'all were on the board, giving control of the schools over to the charter network would not have fired the board members. They still would have had their elected positions. They could have been reelected. This TEA takeover is at least 7 years. Mike Miles came in and gave a plan for 2 years, or so he say it's 2 years, but he can be there up to 7 years. And the commissioner can send his ass off and put somebody else in there. They don't have to keep Mike Miles. They can put somebody else in there. Doesn't necessarily. Mike Miles seemed like he don't last that long any fucking way. He don't. He has. I haven't seen him in as a superintendent for longer than 2 or 3 years any damn way. So it don't seem like he gonna stay. So shit, they might get Mike Miles up out of there and put somebody else in there. And then it's that shit all we starting all over again. So yeah, if you want somebody to blame for this, you blame them. Now that I went off on those 5 dumb fucks, I can't believe it. The largest, the seventh largest district in the country, 1,200 workers total. These were janitors. Most of these janitors are Hispanic, fired because of 5 fucking idiots. Now let's get to why they were fired. So Mike Miles is the current superintendent of HISD. He's a fucking idiot and an asshole. He doesn't know how to run school districts. And here's why. Before he was appointed in Houston, he served as superintendent of Dallas Independent School District from 2012 to 2015. During this time, it was upheaval and scandal. He was brought into Dallas ISD to implement reforms to so-called improve the district's academic performance. He was focused on nothing but standardized testing and teacher evaluations based on student performance. But his aggressive strategies often led to high turnover rates among teachers, increasing from 12% to 22% during his first 2 years. He was only there 3 fucking years. There were several scandals during his administration in Dallas. When he got here, there were people in Dallas that did bring up some of the stuff that was going on there. He essentially destroyed that district. When he was in Dallas, it was several scandals involving high ranking officials he hired from his previous district in Colorado. His chief of staff resigned because of federal indictment for taking kickbacks, and other top administrators left after various issues, including falsifying reports and making inappropriate comments. This is all under Mike Miles in Dallas. So, one of the things he did in Dallas, he introduced a teacher evaluation system that tied pay to performance metrics like test scores and student feedback rather than experience. Some schools initially saw improvement. The gains were not sustainable once additional funding and stipends dried up, which led to a decline in performance because experienced teachers left for better opportunities. Remember that 12 to 22 people were leaving in droves. Now you can incentivize, you're going to tie the pay to the performance, but then you don't sustain it. That don't make sense. Either gonna get paid for high performance or not. Of course, if the shit goes away, then why am I doing this? Not to mention, you can't even keep fucking teachers. So you constantly getting new people in, having to retrain themselves and the damn students. It's not sustainable. His approach in Houston is the same. Of course, we know he was appointed by Texas Education Agency to Commissioner Morath because of the takeover. His plan initially for HISD included significant layoffs. That's not what he initially said when he first came on. He didn't initially say that he was firing everybody. But now he's saying that there's a 450 million budget gap and that they have to lay off a bunch of people. He this is who he's laid off so far. All plant operators, all school plant operators. He's also cut positions like wraparound specialists. Now, if you're in education, you know what a wraparound specialist is. We already don't have enough wraparound specialists, but the few that we do have, I've worked with a lot because I was in one of those areas. And these are the ones they are responsible for helping getting the kids the services that they need. They help with kids being homeless, kids living in shelters. They help with just all different sort of things. And it's not at each school. This is for the district wide. He's gotten rid of all these specialized positions like HVAC, plumbing, all of these people with specialized training to handle some of these are things that go on. These are buildings, these are school buildings. It's just like a house. You need an HVAC person, you need a plumber, you need a electrician. He's gotten rid of all those positions and he's now going to charge janitors with the job of doing plumbing, HVAC, and electrical in the schools. Also, maintenance on the buses. Got all these buses we got to maintain. He got rid of those. Now, he claimed us 450 million budget gap, but during his first year as superintendent at HISD, there was several unnecessary budget expenses. One specifically was a costly event where it was a teacher in service day where they had to watch a film about Mike Miles. And then teachers in service. It's never everybody. This fool got all of the teachers together in the damn. I believe it was Reliant, and this fool got him watching a movie, and it's about him. And I seen some clips of it. I'm like, man, what the fuck is this? Teacher in service. First of all, this the first 2 weeks before the kids come back. That's usually the time for us to prepare our classrooms. We do all of the different trainings that we have to do yearly. It's a lot of fucking trainings. We also have to have, I believe, 100, it's 100 and some hours of in service that we have to have as teachers to keep our certification. And this fool takes, mind you, this time is critical. No teacher is just sitting around chilling. Okay. It's 2 weeks sound like a long time, but it's really not, because we not just doing the whole classroom thing. Yeah, we gotta physically go in there and fix our classrooms. Why? Because your classroom may change every year. So you can't keep all that shit that's required to be on the walls in those classrooms. That shit can't stay there during the summer, because this might not even be your classroom. And that's usually something that's organized by the plant operators. So we'll see how this school year ends, or how this summer goes without all these plant operators not being here. The dumbass thing about the in service, that was a misuse of resources and funds when he claims that there's significant financial challenge. The other thing he did was he made the decision to end a no cost Verizon program that provided internet access and laptops to 56,500 HISD students. This, there was no cost. This was a partnership. It served no cost. Now, this is what he wants to do, because this is, if you consider this line item in the budget, it's, the item is then made up for because of the partnership. So it's no cost to, it didn't cost the district, and it don't cost the kids. But he got rid of it, and he wants to choose his own vendors to provide this service or a similar service to these students, which is now a line item that's not made up for. There is no funding to cover this. He now just wants to use his own vendors. Now, who is the vendors that he's using? Wanting to pay them checks out of the HISD budget. This would be actual cash instead of it being a program like the plan through Verizon. This provided laptops and internet access. Specifically, the internet access was a big deal. So they would give them mobile, they were like mobile hotspots. And they wasn't like a mobile phone. It was just wherever they are, they got electricity. These were portable, and they used the cell phone towers to get the signal to provide the Wi-Fi. And I had a lot of kids that were homeless, like living on the street. And the library ain't open all day. But wherever they would lay their head, because they would be couch surfing or whatever, they had internet where they went. They could plug up the little mobile hotspot. They had access to be able to do the work and do the things that was needed for them to excel in school. He's getting rid of that. Now, this is something that Dr. Latham helped put together to close the gap of the digital divide. And then this fool comes in and just opens the gap right back up. It's stupid. Another thing that's going on with Mike Miles, in November of last year, a mysterious payment appeared on HISD's financial ledgers to cover Mike Miles's moving expenses and a temporary contract at the beginning of his tenure. This is about $64,072 was given to him over 3 payments in late June of 2023. This raised concerns about conflict of interest and violation of board policy, because the HISD policy says that no employee, including superintendent, can be involved in business paid for with district funds. his communications people said that he was paid $42,981.12 for his work between June 1st and June 22nd, and $25,000 in moving expenses. Two other checks for $14,860.06 and $6,231.10 was issued in error, and supposedly they were voided in June. They also claimed that his salary was set to $1,473 per day under the interim contract to align with the former superintendent prorated salary of $360,000 a year. They then later raised that to $380,000 a year with his permanent contract. Now, the interim contract pay is different from the permanent contract pay. It's about $100,000 less. They pay you more when you're interim because shit, this ain't promised. Shit, this day for day type. He went in there and asked them for some more money for him to be the superintendent. He asked for 2 million, 1 or 2 million. They didn't give him the 2 million, but they gave him 380,000, which would be the salary of an interim superintendent, not a permanent superintendent. There's, of course, some people that are against him. Houston Federation of Teachers, they passed a vote of no confidence. Really, it means nothing though, because it's Texas and we have no unions, even though we pay union dues. Weird, huh? Yeah. Miles is still going on with his plans of these NES schools and whatever it is that he's claiming to have, whatever his plans is to try and make this shit work. But his methods in Dallas prove that the shit ain't gonna work in Houston, which is an even larger district. They just broke a story about Mike Miles just this past week about how he has charter schools. Now, you see the connection with the charter schools, right? So he has charter schools in Texas and in Colorado. Now, his charter schools in Texas receive funding from the state, or they're like public private charter schools. So they receive public dollars. They uncovered a check. It shows that he's sent his schools in Colorado about $1 million. His schools in Colorado are drowning in debt and enrollment is low. So he's sending the money from Texas to offset the expenses in Colorado. So he taking Texas money, our tax dollars, and sending it over to his failing schools in Colorado. Now, they're claiming, no one has said what he's doing is illegal by just sending money from Texas to schools in Colorado. But the Texas tax code explicitly say that the property taxes that are collected by the school districts are education. It's supposed to fund the education for students in Texas. And it's clear cut in the tax code. To me, I think he broke the law, because unless he can account for where that money is coming from, because if that money is coming from our tax dollars, then he broke the law. Now, he showed that the money came from somewhere else, then maybe that's not illegal. But how the hell you a superintendent of school of one district and then have another school, have other districts that you supposedly are running? The other thing that he's done that I noticed a while back was the people at the top that's under him. He started, as soon as he comes in, bringing all of his people. Most of these people that he brought in come from Colorado. They came in on a salary in Colorado. When he brought them into Texas, he doubled their salary. he doubled the salaries of the positions that those people hold, meaning the people who he just fired wasn't even making the amount of money that they were making. He also, as soon as he took the position in HISD, he had people working or on the payroll at two different districts. He had them on the payroll here in HISD, and he had him on the payroll in another district. That's some of the stuff that he did in Dallas ISD, bringing in people from his schools and his failing schools at that. Mike Miles is not working in the interest of the kids in the Houston area or kids in general. Hell, I don't think he's working in the best interest of no kids. He just working in the best interest of his own payments. And we can see that from his damn failing schools in Colorado, his charter schools, plus damn charter schools in Texas. So that's the most today that I would get into with Mike Miles and his foolery and those five idiots that put our kids in this position. Not just our kids, our teachers, our janitors, all of the administrators that Mike Miles have gotten rid of. There's a lot of people that were fired or forced into retirement at HISD. And it's sad because even with changes that we've had over time, the one thing that people could count on was that a job at a district like HISD was a stable job. Now you're looking at people who's been in those positions for 30 years is looking, oh shit, what am I supposed to do? And retirement is like their only other option. It's the only option. So I think it's within the best interest of everyone, if you in Texas or not in Texas, to appreciate voting and appreciate being able to locally vote for your school board members, to be able to work in the best interest of your students or your kids. People say they don't like voting. At least at the minimum, you should be getting involved in local voting, because we are seeing the implications of one, not voting on a state level, but also how even those who vote on the local level, how we're affected by the non-voting on the state level. They still are able to get in our shit, and we was a little bit handling our shit, and now we got to deal with them. I'm thinking like the other guy back in 94. He said they always talk about smaller government and local control, and now they sending people here in our local areas to run shit. This ain't government, this is big government. That's against Republican ideals. But as we can see, they don't have those anymore. It's all about money and power, and not about the kids, what it's really supposed to be about. So that is all for today. Thank you for joining me talking about this HISD board controversy and the current state of affairs of HISD. I will have another follow up episode talking about the charter schools, and not the good charter schools, but the charter schools that are spending $15 million on private jets, and how something like that is even possible. But remember to visit our website at politicaleducationforfreedom.org. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to Political Education for Freedom podcast and follow us on all social media platforms at Educate to Free Us. Thank you for tuning in today. I appreciate it. Until next time, keep pushing forward for freedom and education.